Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. On our YouTube channel we talk about all things homesteading and try to implement some of those things on our rural 100 acres here in southern West Virginia. In today's video I want to talk about why branding or your brand is so important on your stay-at-home business or your small farm business or your homestead business, anything like that. Why is brand so important? And I also want to give practical steps on how to build your brand. So we're going to talk about the why and we're going to talk about the how. So stick around. Well, okay, the first thing you may be saying, wait a minute, Troy, didn't just in your last video say you're going to do less talking head and more projects? Yes, I did. Right now, I can't get a project done because it won't stop raining. I'm actually taking a shot in between rainstorms here. A little bit of sunlight, so we're going to take advantage of it. That's why you see me melting here. This was also promised. I had talked about this in some of our other marketing sequence videos that we get into this, and some of you gave me responses that you'd really like to hear some discussion on branding and if it's important. Okay, well, let's dive right in. What is a brand? Well, a brand is kind of a broader term for the representation of your company. You think of like logos, you think of the color schemes that you use, you think of taglines, jingles if you have one, etc. That's all tied around your brand. When you think about brands, brands are all about recognition. So if I pop up this brand, what's the company associated with it? Exactly, PepsiCo, Pepsi Company. If I filled this screen with yellow field and just had black text in it, what does that make you think of? Well, you may think of the Pittsburgh Steelers or think of Sprint Corporation. Sprint, that's their color scheme, yellow with black text. They kind of flood their commercials and all their branding with that solid yellow color. Well, if I would say to you, hey, just do it, what comes to mind there? Exactly, Nike Corporation. So you can see those are all elements of a brand. Those are things that stick in your mind when you see or hear those certain elements. And speaking of brands, little rabbit trail here, have you ever noticed in FedEx, the little arrow, the reversed arrow in the middle of FedEx? Kind of cool. And then have you noticed with Kentucky Fried Chicken, when they just do the headshot of Colonel Sanders with his bow tie, makes it look like he's got little stick arms and legs? You'll never see that the same going forward now, will you? These corporations have spent millions of dollars searing that brand into our minds so we can have that type of awareness, the top of mind awareness when we see that. So does that mean we as homesteaders have to plan on spending millions of dollars to be able to get a brand to stick? No, absolutely not. In fact, it can actually become a little easier for us because our universe is much smaller. And when I use the term universe, I just mean our customer base, our potential customer audience. So our universe could be much smaller, especially if you're dealing with farm products that you're going to sell locally. So let's jump right in and talk about 3 reasons why you need to develop your brand for your small farm or homestead business, or any business for that matter. Well, to me, the number one reason that you need to develop your brand is to look more professional. And you want to look more professional even if you're not the most professional. That's an important part of business. If you think about it, small businesses, small home businesses especially, and even small farm businesses even more so, they struggle with looking professional because it's already a home-based business or a farm-based business. Nobody really wraps professionalism around farmers per se. So you already have that stigma working against you. So if you come out with something that looks professional, then you've already moved up a couple notches in people's eyes. A professional look equals a higher comfort level for your potential customers. A potential customer could look at your professional look, your brand, and say, wow, that guy's got a really nice brand. His farm or his small business must be really really hitting it. They've really got it together. There's just a really nice detail here. And that can really convince customers to obviously spend their hard-earned money with you. And you think about that when it comes to farm or homestead business, like in my situation where I'm selling consumable products, I'm selling food, then I need to be that much more convincing. Because if I'm convincing somebody to say, hey, not only do I want you to buy food that I've raised here and it's not some industrialized process that you may think is safer, but I'm also going to charge you a whole lot more than if you just went down to the grocery store and bought theirs. So I have to look as professional as possible in that situation. Sometimes I hit it out of the park, sometimes I don't. But that's the message I want to try to convey, that my professionalism should boost your confidence in knowing that you're going to get a good product from me, that it's safe, it's worth the investment of the money, and obviously it shows up in a timely manner. And the same if your small business, it doesn't produce food, if you're making handmade items or whatever the case. Again, if somebody can go to Walmart and buy a Chinese knockoff of the same type of product you're producing by hand on your homestead, then you need to convince them as to why yours is better. And again, if you're saying, well, this is a top quality product, this piece of woodworking or this art craft that I've created is very professional, is very handmade, it's craftsmanship, but yet your brand looks like crap, then it's going to be like, well, wait a minute. You say this is good, but even your business brand looks pretty crappy. So that could be an issue. And we also have to get over the stigmatism that professional does not equal snooty. And you see that a lot. I find this constantly with people that really want to get into this country crafts or country chic that's coming back into style, is they think, well, I need something that looks kind of rough and dodgy anyway because it's country. No, that doesn't work. You still want to be professional. If you look at the really good country craft and the country living style businesses, their brand is still very, very polished. It just looks simplified. So don't get into this habit of thinking, oh, professional, people are going to think I'm a snob or I'm just snooty and I'm trying to be something I'm not. We can all be professional. Well, the second reason why you need to develop your brand is to set yourself apart from your competition. Again, in my situation where I'm raising food products on my farm, I want people, if they saw on Facebook or they saw in a brochure or a bulletin or a farmer's market or whatever the case may be, they saw my brand compared to other people's brand, I would hope that my brand would at least rival theirs and maybe even stand out beyond that. And I know in my situation that there isn't a lot of competition to begin with, so when I do have my brand out there, when it looks professional, then that already has me set apart from just the white noise of people selling farm products willy-nilly, or Willie Nelson for that matter. We small businesses normally don't have a large budget, so it's not like we can spend a lot of money advertising our products. A strong brand that's recognizable and memorable may help offset some of those costs. If you have a brand that sticks in people's mind, then be like, hey, that Red Tool House Farm guy, I think I want to call him. I need to try to find his stuff. I'm going to Google him again because I recall seeing something about that. So that helps offset a lot of budget, whereas big companies that have huge budget just keep throwing stuff at you. So media rotation after media rotation and getting it out there. So that helps offset some of those costs there. So that nice brand can outshine the competition and draw people in just because of its attractiveness. Well, number 3 reason why you need to build your brand is top of mind awareness. And that's just kind of a fancy term for saying you want to stick in people's minds. So if you guys saw one of these hats, again, those of you that watch the channel a long time, if you saw one of these hats with a seal on it, you may think, oh, wait a minute, that looks familiar. I've seen that on somebody's channel. That's because I try to always wear one of my branded hats when I'm doing videos. Locally, with my Farm Fresh products, my egg cartons, we've talked about that in the past in previous videos, I've privately branded my egg cartons. Because again, I want people to think, oh, there's Troy's egg carton. Or hey, so-and-so had an egg carton that was kind of interesting. It stuck in my mind. I want to find out where they're getting their fresh eggs. And those type of things stick in people's mind. That's top of mind awareness. And you think of the things, corporations pay millions of dollars to do what's called product placement. Say like if I had a Pepsi can sitting here, I don't drink Pepsi, but if I had one sitting here and I was some huge channel or some huge TV show, then Pepsi would actually find a lot of value in that product being placed there. And you see that even in the movies, that's why James Bond started driving a BMW back in the early 2000s. Who would have thought? And one other point about top of mind awareness, think about, again, those of you that are familiar with my channel, think about my thumbnails. One thing that I've tried to do, if you, over here to the right, my left, of this video playing, if you're looking at it on a desktop, the suggested videos come up. And if any of my thumbnails come up, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner for you, my right, you'll see our Red Tool House brand. I make sure that every one of my thumbnails has that identifier in it. That way, in a sea of thumbnails, if you're familiar with my channel and you're like, hey, oh wow, I don't think I've seen that one by Troy, bang, I'm going to click on that. So that carries across everything, not just YouTube videos. Okay, well, hopefully you've stuck it out with me this long enough. So let's jump right into how to start building your brand, because again, not everybody has a huge budget and can just throw a bunch of money at something. So what's my recommendation to build your brand on a shoestring budget? Well, the first thing you got to do, of course, is pick your name. What is going to be the name of your business? And you got to watch with this. Sometimes this is deceptively easy. People think, well, yeah, I'm going to name it Shady Pines Homestead, or I'm going to name it ABC Meat Company or Acme Meat Products, whatever the case may be. You may come up with a very simple name. And you may like that name, and that name may seem fine, and it could be. But you do yourself a disservice if you don't vet that process a little bit more. You don't want to pick a name just because it sounded cool, or just because, hey, my 12-year-old came up with that and I think I need to honor his creativity by naming it that. He may be very smart and may have come up with something great, or you may get saddled with something you're going to realize on down the road is an issue. You know, one strategy you see happen a lot where people incorporate the core element of their business into their name. An example would be something like John's Quality Meats. Okay, anyone can look at that and think, well, I know what's going on there at John's. Or I think of something I saw the other day, Tridelphia Lawn Care. You drive past that trailer going down the interstate, you think that trailer's probably full of lawn equipment. So that name is pretty self-descriptive there. That's an option. Whatever it is, you want it to be unique, you want it to be memorable, and you want it to be easy to spell, and you want it to be available. And we'll stick a pin in that available. We'll talk about that in a second. So let's use Red Toolhouse, for example. Again, those of you that have gone all the way back to episode 000, which not too many of you have, because who wants to go back that far and listen to me for that long? I talk about how we came up with the name Red Toolhouse. Well, Red Toolhouse actually is the name of the county road that we live on. So you may think, well, Troy, that you just went against everything you said. You just picked a name out of the blue because that was your address. Well, that's what I looked at first, but it actually jumped out at me because there's a story behind the Red Toolhouse. My farm actually used to have the Red Toolhouse up on the back ridge. So that was how the name came about in the first place. So it's kind of an homage to the property. But also it's very unique. People are like, what's the Red Toolhouse? Where is the Red Toolhouse? Is there a Red Toolhouse on Red Toolhouse? So it kind of got people thinking. Obviously, it's 3 easy syllables to pronounce: Red Tool House. Very easy to spell. Not too many people misspell those words. And this was a big one for me. The .com was available. So redtoolhouse.com was available. I didn't have to find some creative way to get around the URL issue. And while that's not how you necessarily want to hang your business on whether the .com is available or not, that is a big piece of it. So if you come up with a name you like, check it out. Go to GoDaddy, go to any of those domain registries, and just do a search and make sure what you've come up with is available. And I can't tell you how many times when consulting with clients, they've picked a name and they want me to help them with develop their web presence. There's absolutely no variation of your business name that we can work out unless we start adding a bunch of stuff, or go to .net or go to .biz, or start putting hyphens and things in it, which, again, you hate to do that, but sometimes you have to go that direction. So if you've made it that far and you've found a name that you like, the .com's available, it's easy to spell, there's really no issues there. What I recommend is then just simply Google that name as a business. Don't Google the .com, just simply Google that business. So in my sense, I Googled Red Toolhouse and I didn't find anything. I found one mention of my neighbor's church, actually. He has a church up on his property, very small church. So I knew I really didn't have a lot of competition in that situation. There wasn't any other Red Toolhouse businesses in the United States. And then, of course, the last thing I did was I looked at our Secretary of State's business registry just to make sure there wasn't a business registered as Red Toolhouse. Now, if you find at the state level that there's a business registered with your exact name, you're going to want to stay away from that. If you Google something and you find, hey, there's a close representation of my business over in Wisconsin and I'm here in West Virginia, then you look and say, okay, is this business, do we do the same type of thing? So if it was Red Toolhouse and there's a Red Toolhouse in Wisconsin and they actually build outbuildings, it's like, okay, I'm a small farm, they're an outbuilding. You're probably not going to confuse those two. So you can get away with that. Now, it's only if it's trademark or copyrighted is when that becomes an issue. And of course, as you search that, you can see if they're using the trademark or copyright symbols on those. Okay, so once you've got your name picked, it's now time to develop the visual representation of that, or your logo. So where do you start there? Well, I'm going to give you a crash course. This is Logo 101, and I spend weeks talking to people about this, so we're going to do it in about 5 minutes or less. So hang on, here we go. So Logo 101. Logo is broken down into 3 primary parts. You have your icon, you have your signature, and you have your tagline. Now I'm going to use an example here of one that we've designed recently. This is Shem Snack Shack right here. And you can see we got Shem, we got Shem's camel hanging out here on the logo. So the whole representation here is the logo. This whole graphic you see is the logo. Shim and the camel would represent the icon. Those are the things stand alone. In fact, in representations of this icon in the restaurant, we have these two, the camel and shims, throughout the building, just large standalone. We wanted that to be top of mind awareness. If you saw this camel in this specific town in Kentucky, then there you go. And the same with shim. Shim holding a hot dog. Again, if you saw that, we wanted people to think, oh, that's the hot dog place. The signature portion of that would be Shim Snack Shack. That's the actual words that make up the name of the business, or the name that's represented in the logo. So that is the signature. With the tagline, not every logo has to have a tagline. So you can see the tagline down at the bottom. It's gourmet hot dogs flooded with flavor. So those are the three components, and really I'd only worry about the two for right now. Worry about the icon and the signature. And actually, some logos don't even have icons. You could just do standalone signatures. Some logos now don't even have signatures. You think about the Nike logo. It's become so top of mind aware that they can just have the icon with no signature associated with it. Really solid advice, and please follow me on this. When you go to design your logo, unless you have good design experience, please don't do it yourself. You could sit down and sketch it out on some paper. You could come up with some ideas. Those type of things would put you way ahead of the game if you're going to hire somebody. But unless you have that experience, please don't do that. And here's why. There's more to designing a logo than just coming up with a graphic. Depending on what you do with the logo, you don't want to paint yourself in a corner with the usability of that logo. A logo must be designed in what's called a vector-based design software. Vector, and again, won't get too deep in the weeds here, but vector is path-based graphic, vector points, remember that from physics, whereas something that's rasterized is pixel-based. So you can think about the easiest way to look at that is imagine that if you took, let's say you took a snapshot of me sitting here at the table, and it's on a cheap smartphone from 5 years ago. Technology's degraded so much. So you took a picture of me and you say, okay, I need to blow that up. I want that to be a billboard of Troy sitting there. Well, I'm going to take that picture and blow it up. Well, if you blew that up 500 times, it's going to look like garbage. It's going to be very pixelized. It's almost going to be illegible because the pixels just kept getting bigger and bigger and all the definition's lost. Well, with a vector graphic, it's all paths. So if you took my red Toolhouse seal here, and you blew that up to say, I'm going to paint that on the side of my house, or I'm going to have a big piece of vinyl cut and stick that on the side of my house. Kelly would love that. Then I could blow that up the size of my house and it would never degrade because those vector paths are just going to expand. There's no pixelization. There's no loss of resolution in that process because vector doesn't have resolution. So if you don't have vector-based software, then do not design your logo. You could go to Photoshop, you could go to Publisher or whatever and whip something together and think, I think this is going to work because I used a piece of clip art and I used a nice little typeset out of Word. I think it's going to work for me. That may look okay, but you're going to have issues on down the road when your business grows and you discover the limitations of that design. So don't be frustrated and think, wow, I've got to spend hundreds if not thousands of dollars to have a logo designed because Troy says I shouldn't try it myself. There are all kinds of services out there. This is me giving away the farm here. There's all kinds of services out there that you can use to design logos. There's thousands and thousands of starving graphic artists out there. Evidently in the mid-2000s, every kid that came through college decided he wanted to be a graphic artist because mom bought him a computer and the trust fund paid for all of college. So there are thousands of graphic artists out there. Some of them are good, some of them are not good. But point being, there's a lot of opportunity out there to have a logo designed cheaply. There's services like Fiverr and some of those other. But you really got to watch. Make sure you look at the fine print. Make sure you know exactly what they're getting. And of course, request a portfolio. Request details of what they've done. And of course, this pick list, you can go over with them to make sure they're giving you a good quality logo. So the vector format is number one. Number two is have the colors defined with the Pantone system, or what we call the PMS system. And no, that's not the shade of red that my wife's face turns once a month. PMS stands for Pantone Matching System. She never watches these videos, so I don't have to worry about any retaliation. So the PMS system, or the Pantone system, is similar to paint swatches when you go to a box store and you say, I'm going to paint the room XYZ. You go through and find these paint swatches, has a name and a number associated with it, and that's how the guy behind the counter knows how to mix up that paint and give you the color you want. Well, it's the same with ink colors. in representation in print, and now that's carried over into graphic design, it's carried over into sign work, that's carried over into web. That Pantone color can translate to all kinds of different colors to identify the same tone and representation of a color. So if we looked at the Pantone red that I use, then we could specify that. So if I had a printer here locally print something for me, or I've had a printer in California print it, if I gave them that Pantone color, when I bring those two pieces together, those reds should match if they did things correctly. So make sure those colors are identified. Now, white and black, they don't have a Pantone color associated with them, but every other color in there does. When you go to pick colors, I strongly recommend your logo only have two primary colors. With Red Toolhouse, our primary colors are red and black, white is secondary. So red and black, that's two colors that complement one another. You really got to watch. Don't pick colors that have same tonal qualities. I always think just came from South Florida, so down in Miami, you see a lot of people do turquoise and coral. So when you put those two colors together, even though they're not the same color, they kind of have the same tonal blend. They're kind of a mid-tone. Be deliberate when picking your colors. Don't just say, well, Grandma liked chartreuse, so everything's going to be chartreuse. I don't even know what color that is, actually. Anyway, so vector art file, Pantone colors identified. Number 3 is ask for the native file. So if you're hiring somebody to design your logo, ask them for the native files in which they created it. So we use Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator at our office. So when my business partner designs something, he's doing it in Illustrator. So there's an Adobe Illustrator or an AI file that's created. That's a vector-based program. So that AI file is what you want to get a hold of. There's other vector-based programs out there, so just request that native file. If they won't give you that native file, at least get an EPS, an encapsulated postscript. That is the truest form of that logo design, and that way if you ever have issues, if your graphic designer gets hit by a bus tomorrow and you've already paid him for the logo and all you've got's a real crappy JPEG, then you're kind of up the creek there. If you've got the AI file or at least the EPS, then those can be used as your master. So you acquire those files. You got the AI file and you got the EPS file. You acquire those. Then you want to put those in a safe spot. So save those on your computer, put them on cloud storage if you have it, save them elsewhere on a hard drive, whatever the case may be. Always use those files as your master. What you're going to discover is an AI or EPS, most conventional software really doesn't play nicely with those. They're going to want to convert it. You open it in Photoshop, it's going to convert those to a rasterized image. If you end up saving out that Photoshop file and say, okay, this is my new master, then you've just killed yourself with a vector. That Photoshop will automatically save that as raster. Those master files are going to translate extremely well when you look at different medium. If you use web, you're going to want to convert them to JPEGs or transparent PNGs. When you do print, you're going to want to keep those vector-based. When you go to something like this, embroidery, that vector logo is the only thing they can accept to digitize this, to turn it into a stitch file, a file that actually stitches this out like a plotter or a CNC. When you go to outdoor media, again, if they have that vector, they can blow that up super large to go on a billboard and it not degrade as much as if you gave them a little JPEG. So those files are critical to hang on to. So if you're going to have somebody design your logo, look at those 3 things, remember those 3 things, discuss those 3 things with your designer to make sure they're okay with all that. If they're not going to play nicely there, then maybe look for somebody else to do that. You really want to have control of those 3 elements. It'll save you lots of money in the long run. Well, building a quality brand for your small business, whether it's a farm business or a homestead business, is extremely important. I can't stress it enough. I know when you think, okay, I'm just selling a couple things to my friends and neighbors, that it's not a big deal. And at that time, it may not really be a big deal. It'd be best to not have a brand at that point. When you're ready to actually brand your business, do so professionally. Take the time to do it. Take the time to spend the money if you've got it in your budget to do it. It's going to pay off dividends in the long run. You don't want to be 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road and you're still using a crappy design that you came up with a Word document on your kitchen table one night and realize, wow, my business has grown. I'm doing tens of thousands, if not $100,000 a year, and my brand really sucks. Now when you go to rebrand that, it's going to be much, much more expensive for you because you're going to have to reprint and redesign a bunch of things. You're going to have to reteach your customers what your brand is. You're going to lose some of that top of mind awareness. You're going to lose some of that brand identity. So do it now. Do your due diligence now before you grow. Well, again, Got deep in the weeds there. I hope you guys stuck with me on that. Give me some comments below if you like this. Thumbs up if you did as well. We can discuss it more. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, or if you want to make sure I can see them, to answer them, because sometimes I don't see all the comments. Go to redtoolhouse.com to the contact form and send me a question there if you have any questions about brand. I'd be more than happy to share. I'm not going to charge you a consulting fee to talk about branding. Well, take care, everybody.